Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and since we're now in the month of December, I want to go ahead and give my top 5 watch releases of 2023. Now, these aren't necessarily watches that I would buy, but I appreciated all 5 of these for various reasons, which I will dive into. Obviously, slimming this down to 5 means there are a lot of honorable mentions. I'm not going to mention them here because then I feel like I'm kind of defeating the purpose of doing a top 5 list. So go ahead and respond below in the comment section regarding which ones you think should have made this list, or if you happen to hopefully agree with at least one of the picks I have. But there were a lot of releases, even though 2023 is probably going to be seen as an inferior year, in my opinion, to 2022 when it comes to notable watch releases. But the first one I want to go ahead and do is out of Grand Seiko, and that is the SBGW295. That's out of their Elegance collection. Now, this one was actually the last one I added to my list and is why I'm actually starting with it, because it's probably the one I'm weakest on in terms of including. But overall, I think the very traditional look, the use of the black lacquer dial, the gold-colored indices, the historic sort of throwback font and dial labeling, which is very minimalist, all actually make the watch feel quite a bit different than what I think we tend to get out of Grand Seiko. But it's still modernized in the fact that the case is titanium. Now, it's not a perfect watch, even though it is a manual wind, and even though it has no date, something we don't get a lot of, but sometimes out of Grand Seiko, it is still, for its size, a relatively thick watch. And as a reminder, this is a 38 millimeter watch. But overall, aesthetically, it just feels, while still respecting the grammar of design, which Grand Seiko likes to lean into, it just looks and feels different than a lot of what they otherwise do. I know a lot of people have been really focusing in on their sort of sports watches or professional watches. I personally have always been more of a fan of the Heritage line, and I haven't really looked at the Elegance line before until this watch came out. Now, unfortunately, limited to 500 pieces, price tag of just under $14,000 US. This is not a watch that is on my purchasing list. However, my hope is that the response to this watch will be sufficiently solid that Grand Seiko will continue to explore things in this vein. Modernized case components, maybe some throwback looks, simpler dials. I haven't seen a dial like this out of Grand Seiko that I liked as much as since they had their old champagne dial. I appreciate all of the sort of nature-based themes that they tend to do. However, those dials can have a background texture that looks fairly busy, and really post-Snowflake, I think, and maybe the Birch, it started to get a little too busy for my liking. And I think part of the challenge that Grand Seiko has run into, if I could opine a little bit about them, is that they very much lean into, it seems, a desire to just sort of do the same case and then just keep changing the dial up. And that may appeal to a mass manufacturing standpoint, and they may look and say, well, that's kind of what Rolex does with their Oyster cases. But regardless, I just think that doing something that looks a little bit different is what they're going to need to do if they really want to steal market share away from people that are buying Swiss watches. This doesn't quite achieve that, but it looks different than a lot of other Grand Seikos out there. And I think as a dress watch, even though it's a little thick for one, could still slide in under a cuff and is a really true competitor. If they start exploring this option more, I think there's a lot that can be mined out of this. My next watch of my top 5 best watches of 2023 is the Rolex Yachtmaster 42 in RLX titanium. What is RLX titanium? It's grade 5 titanium. Rolex had to give it a cute little patented name for no obvious reason other than that's what they like to do. But as a release, I do think it's really noteworthy. Now, is it cutting edge? In the grand scheme of watches, absolutely not. We've had titanium watches around for years. This isn't even Rolex's first titanium watch, though it is the first one they're actually going to sell significant numbers of. And again, it's not necessarily bringing anything new to horology. But in terms of Rolex, a very conservative company, which doesn't mix things up all that much, it is a pretty big leap. Especially, I think it's interesting because it's a leap in a different direction than what we have been seeing out of Rolex. When we talk about Rolex, they normally do what I call, and it's a made-up word, but they kind of luxurify their sports watch lines. So you take a professional, they call their sport, what we think of sports watches, they often call those as the professional watches. So you'll take something like the Explorer, and then Rolex will luxurify it by throwing it in a gold case. Now, the Explorer being in a gold 18 karat case makes zero sense because the only exploring that watch is ever going to do is inside the C-suite. But for them to actually take titanium, a metal that is useful for tool watch purposes, and then put it in the Yachtmaster, a line that I always thought was the luxified version of the Submariner, was a little odd. I think it was probably done, if I had to venture a guess, and I will, that they thought the Yachtmaster isn't expected to have as many models produced in a given year as Submariners. Rolex sells a lot of subs. So maybe to keep expectations limited or to kind of convey to the public that there wouldn't be all that many made in a year, they went ahead and they took a less popular line, the Yachtmaster line, and decided to go ahead and do the RLX titanium there. All that said, the watch is exceedingly good looking. It has a lot of the classical stylings of the traditional Submariner, or more specifically the Submariner date, but you have that frosted bezel look that I associate with the Yachtmaster, and you have that rich, dark coloration of the grade 5 titanium that RLX titanium is. All put together, incidentally, in a retail priced package that ended up, because this watch came out first, but I thought surprisingly and interestingly, ended up significantly cheaper retail than what Omega did with their new ceramic iteration of the Planet Ocean. So for all those reasons, I felt that this watch was worthy as being seen as one of the 5 best releases of 2023. Keeping with overly expensive watches, let's go even further up the price ladder and let's do Vashon Constantin. During Watches and Wonders, they released a new version of the Overseas, a moon phase retrograde date. Now, Vashon is known for doing retrogrades. In fact, they had another retrograde in the Patrimony line that almost replaced the Overseas in this list. The reason it didn't was, even though I personally prefer the aesthetics of the VC Patrimony with the retrograde functionality, this is the first time that we've seen this retrograde functionality as part of the Overseas line. Patrimonies have had retrogrades for years. Given its use of a lacquer dial, given its use of a very attractively placed and configured moon phase, I think this watch was a very surprising release out of a company that has really struggled, I feel, to capture a lot of market attention. This, giving it a little bit more personality, I think really helps out quite a bit. And while I would still prefer a more pure 222, the Overseas is based on the 222, the historic 222, and the new 222 does actually have a lot of demand. But again, that is a very expensive retail watch because that one's currently entirely in gold. Whereas this becomes an option, I think, for a lot of people that are looking for something sportier. The blue dial is going to resonate a lot with people that are more into the sports watch lineup. You don't see that as much in dress watches. And so just for a variety of reasons, this is really more of a personal one for me because this is the first time I saw an Overseas that I actually wanted. And so for that reason, it ends up on the list. My penultimate watch of my top 5 best watch releases of 2023 is a Seiko, the SRPK1. Oh, this one, I think a lot of you are going to agree with this one being on the list. This watch was easily the most popular Seiko I heard about all year. I did actually have a video on this watch when it was revealed, along with they actually released some other throwback style, vintage inspired watches at the time. But it was this one specifically that got a lot of attention out of people. Officially, the Seiko 5 Sports 55th Anniversary Limited Edition. This is a recreation with modern technology, of course, of a 1968 Seiko 5 Sports watch, the 615D, and it is incredibly true to form to the original. Yes, there are some differences aside from the upgraded components and the different movement that powers it, but while it's not a total one-for-one, it's extremely close and collectors have very much appreciated it. Also, very approachable in terms of price point. It lists at $415 US. It is a limited edition run of 15,555 pieces. I criticized that in the video I did about this watch at the time, noting that at that limit level, it was pointless and they should have made it an unlimited run. I actually had a number of people comment saying that I was incorrect. Not necessarily that it should be unlimited, but that they would actually sell out. I was very skeptical about them selling out of over 15,000 units. This watch is still available to be added into your cart on the US marketplace for Seiko. So maybe someday they'll sell out of the 15,000, but as of early December 2023, this watch looks readily available and you can buy it at retail. All that said, however, it is an excellent looking watch. I actually would have considered getting this, but it was hard to get initially because the first batches that they were making did sell out very quickly. And I, of course, have moved on since then. I already have a Seiko. I'm not a Seiko collector specifically, but it is an exceedingly attractive watch. And if you are a fan of the original or you just like vintage watch looks, definitely check this one out. It's quite approachable price-wise, and it might be right up your alley, and I think it easily deserves to make the top 5 best releases of 2023 list. And my number 1 watch release for 2023 is, and it's a personal choice, easily my favorite watch I saw all year from Watches and Wonders. It's the Chopard Lu 1860. Yes, it's a dress watch. Yes, most of you will not care. This watch is extremely attractive, and I think it easily deserves to be the number 1 watch. It is, of everything that came out this year, it is the one I most wanted and wished I would be able to buy. However, they are very difficult to get and they are very expensive. But as a dress watch, this does so much right, but does so much original. It is 36.5 millimeters in diameter, so it is a very traditional style dress watch. It's not just a small diameter, the watch is also very thin. It sits at only 8.2 millimeters thick, thanks to the use of the micro-rotor Geneva hallmarked movement that it is powered by. The dial is actually made out of gold and features a very, very attractive guilloche pattern, and it is a simple time-only watch with a small seconds down towards the 6 o'clock position. The watch case is not precious metal, which is a little bit surprising at first when you see the price tag of $23,700 US retail for this watch. However, it uses a version of steel they call lucent steel. There's something of a glow to the steel case, and the salmon dial that they've paired with it, which is more of a copperish tone to the salmon than I think what we would normally think of with a salmon dial. This has resulted in an overall extremely classy package. It is by far a worthy dress watch in anyone's collection. I think Chopard has not gotten a lot of attention, probably because they're more known for making jewelry than watches, but they're doing a lot here. They actually had another watch that is obviously not on this list, but in their sports watch lineup, they had a new version of their Eagle, their Alpine Eagle, which was also extremely, extremely impressive. However, when push comes to shove, and it's not much of a push, to be frank, this watch easily was my favorite of 2023. But anyway, those are my 5 picks for the best watches to be revealed in 2023. What are yours? Again, comment below. I'd love to read them. If you enjoy the video, please do give it a like. If you want to be notified when I have new videos, go ahead and click subscribe. I probably will here in the next week or two do my 5 worst watches of 2023 because what goes up must come down. But until next time, I hope you all have a really good day.